Welcome to my house rules for Blackstone Fortress. My name is Goodjesse, and thanks for joining me. Why am I just now sharing house rules for Blackstone Fortress? It's been out for a very long time. Blackstone Fortress came out in 2018, and I've been playing it ever since then, and I'm still only about halfway through the campaign because I'm so slow. But I've been working on my house rules the entire time. So the last time I updated my house rules, yesterday, November 15th, 2021. So I'll be covering version 3.6 currently of my house rules. I will post the link to my house rules on Board Game Geek down below. Let me state that these house rules are made in a cherry pick fashion. You are welcome to take some of them and leave the rest, the ones that you like. And these house rules are heavily focused at improving immersion, atmosphere, theme, as well as increasing difficulty in a thematic way, and increasing difficulty in a way that feels a little bit more like playing against an actual mind. I will start with the very first modification, one that I began with and omitted over time. It's the most popular mod out there, and that is to take grievous wounds and modify them from equating to 3 wounds, and nerfing them to 2 wounds. I think that for the average player, I would say either take this one modification to increase your difficulty and don't do any others, or do not do this modification. In my opinion, it breaks the game. Whether you count grievous wounds as 3 wounds or 2, it's important to use the appropriate tokens for grievous wounds and regular wounds, as they are dealt with differently throughout the game. So my first official valid modification is during the initial campaign, the quest for the hidden lair. I have dwarfed the Stronghold bonuses from D6 Archaeotech points, trading points, to D3 trading points. I felt like it was too easy to acquire an abundance of trading points in the initial campaign, and rolling 6 additional points can make it too easy. So this mod is to increase difficulty and functionality, trying to not break the game by getting an overabundance of points. Next comes the condition encounter modification. Sometimes when drawing encounter cards, we will pull a condition for one of the positions. In this case, loose cabling on encounter number 3. In the stated rules as they're written, instead of placing a group of hostiles in this position, we will add this condition to the current combat. This modification applies this condition to the combat and then draws a fresh card for that position so that we still have enemies to fight. If another condition is drawn for the replacement card, this effect can stack. So it's possible to draw multiple conditions in addition to having a group of hostiles. This increases difficulty and theme. The next modification is called Call Maglev Transport. When attempting to call a Maglev Transport for a 4-up action, I've added the modification that I roll a d12, and on a success, any success, the Maglev Transport arrives as per usual. On a failure, this portal locks down, and to symbolize this, I separate it about that far, and the explorers, need to move on to another portal and try again. And if they run out of portals, the last portal available is an automatic success for a 4-up. This improves difficulty and theme. In the Blackstone Fortress stories, the maglev chambers are incredibly unreliable. They are very erratic to be piloted. They might not show up when you call them. So I like to represent this on the table by trying to call one and then the portal completely locking down. Now, side note, hostiles can still spawn from here. Next up is model limits modification. If the model limit of what you have on hand is ever surpassed, I recommend using proxies or tokens to represent the models that you're lacking, rather than the stated rules of the book, which is capped by whatever models you have on hand. A couple of reasons for doing this: increased difficulty, increased theme and functionality. In particular, thematically, in the stories, there are waves upon waves of the same type of hostile, such as Spindle Drones or Traitor Guard, and it's easier to represent this on the table when I don't place a cap on how many can show up. And also, the game was written and produced to buy additional models as you see fit, represented by the expansion boxes, so it makes sense to me. These inspiration tokens I will use sometimes to represent a lacking of models on hand, and I can use one as like the first group and two as the second group to help me keep track of what's what. My next modification is called exploration cards. What I do is I separate all of the combat and challenge cards and shuffle them as two separate decks. And then, just to keep them all together, I stack them against each other face in. And when I create my exploration deck, I alternate the side that I pull from. This creates an exploration deck that essentially goes combat, encounter, or vice versa. And this does a couple of things. It improves theme for me. Oh, side note. When starting a campaign, I will shuffle both these decks only one time, unless I run out of a particular stack. This increases the thematic immersion in the way that the Blackstone Fortress is supposed to be an ever-changing, living, breathing, labyrinthian place. And in my experience, when I shuffle the exploration deck over and over again, I tend to pull the same chamber over and over again, and it really takes me out of the immersion. So this makes it very ever-changing. In addition, cascading between encounters and combats makes it easier for a solo or a group to decide whether or not they have time to pull another card, being that your average encounter takes about 5 minutes, and the average combat can take over an hour. And a side note, if I'm playing with Dak Grek, I pull the isolated challenge card just so that there's easy access without disrupting the decks, because his ship allows him to take that challenge, or anyone to take that challenge. My next modification is called character ships. I always take 4 ships as per the rules. During the precipice step, I only pull resource cards for ships that represent my current team. And the main reason I do this is to prevent there being a deficit of available resources because one character completely bought out their own ship, and then another team goes to purchase stuff from that ship and there's nothing left. And just a little bit more information on that. I select my groups of 4 characters and I lock them in all the way up through escalation at least, so it's always the same group of 4 characters, and this allows there to be plenty of resources for every group. So these 2 ships would not be offering any resources during the precipice step. These 2 ships, which represent all of these characters that I'm playing escalation with, I always have a total of 12 resource cards available same as if there were 4 ships with 3 resources each. So if there's 4 ships, each ship will offer 3 resources. If there are 3 ships, each ship will offer 4 resources. If there are 2 ships, each ship will offer 6 resources, and 1 ship would offer 12. This does, I believe, increase the theme. The Uneasy Alliance, in my opinion, doesn't really work very well, but this is a way that it can work a little bit to where you're selling your resources to your own people at a discount, and then it ties into the theme, it ties into the functionality of just having plenty of resources available. My next modification is called Discovery Storage. In between expeditions, I like to gather up all of the obtained clues in Archaeotech and essentially, thematically speaking, leave them at Precipice or on the support ships. Being that I've played only solo, I use the small Blackstone Fortress zip bag here to act as a vault, a Precipice vault. If I were playing with a group, I could just as easily keep everyone's resources in their individual stasis bags. The reason I do this is it makes it easier for me to decide if I have a total party kill and I want to basically do a complete do-over. I can easily take all of the newly found discovery cards and shuffle them back in and just try again. This is particularly helpful for me as I am constantly testing new modifications. Or you might not want to be so punishing to a group of new players who are feeling out the game. Or you might not want to just give them all of the resources they obtained, the discovery cards that they obtained, because it doesn't really make sense to me that if you have a total party wipe, that somehow you teleport back to Precipice with everything you found. Thematically speaking, I think that other explorers would probably loot everything you'd found by the time even if they returned your body to Precipice. My next modification is called Expansions, and I may move this into the Fixes and Clarifications section, but the way I play the game in this respect is I break the groups into individual locked groups of 4, calling them Group A, B, C. This is initially was just to get the most out of the game and the first expansions. Functionality-wise, the reason I did this was so that I didn't take the first group into the Quest for the Hidden Vault, make them super powered, and then take them into the Amble and Trader Command. I felt it would be more enjoyable to have a fresh group build up from scratch again and not be overpowered. So basically I had Group A, 4 characters take on the Hidden Vault. Then I had Group B, 4 characters take on the Amble and the Trader Guard or Trader Command expansions. And then the third expansion, Escalation, came with its own group of 4 characters, Group C, and they took on Escalation. Going forward, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to break it up, because all the characters have had a pretty good opportunity to bulk up at this point. Furthermore, some of the expansions have dedicated discovery decks that don't include critical components, such as these components that allow characters to inspire, such as the Empyrean Chronometer, which is Janice Drake's secret agenda. I recommend that if someone is playing one of those expansions with a character who needs this item in order to inspire, or for their secret agenda, that they seed in these cards to the expansion specific discovery deck. And I recommend doing that in stages. So the first expedition, I wouldn't add any of them. Also, the discovery decks for those expansions are smaller, so that's why I don't add them. Then the second expedition, I would add 1, and then the third expedition, I would add another 1, and so on, until they're all discoverable for those characters to meet their secret agenda requirements. This modification increases difficulty by not letting the characters become overpowered. Theme, I believe it creates a sense of living multiple storylines of these multiple independent groups on precipice going into the Blackstone Fortress and making their own way. And I think in this respect, you get a little bit of that taste of an uneasy alliance. Not necessarily the 4 individual characters competing against themselves, but rather the individual groups of 4 characters, not necessarily trading all of their resources among each other. In this respect, I feel like it's made the entire game bigger for me. So that's difficulty and thematic increases, and then functionality, like I said, just to better distribute the resources among all the characters. Our next modification is called Stronghold Order. The rules as written for the quest for the Hidden Vault is to take the 4 strongholds and mix them up and pull one at random as you go through them. Personally, I find this anticlimactic to pull the Death Maze early, where you face Obsidious Malix. To me, let me just cut to the chase. Obsidious Malix is the main baddie on the Blackstone Fortress for the quest for the Hidden Vault, and if you face off against his challenge early and kill him, he still shows up at random through being pulled through the encounter deck, and it kind of just doesn't make sense to me. It's better, in my opinion, to pull this card aside, mix these 3 up, and pull them at random, and save the Death Maze for last, so that you put down Obsidious Malix at the very end, like everyone wants. This is only to increase theme. My next modification is called Spindle Drones. I have decided to add +1 Spindle Drones to every single encounter. The reason being is that in the stories, Spindle Drones are very prevalent. The Blackstone Fortress is sending them out in waves to counteract every insurgence that's happening there. And in the encounter cards, it's basically 2 Spindle Drones, 2 Spindle Drones, 1 and 1. And I want to see waves upon waves of Spindle Drones in my thematic experience. In the quest for the Black Vault, there is a card that can be pulled that doubles the amount of Spindle Drones. I love that, but I want a more permanent sense of that, so I add 1 to every encounter. And when they're doubled in the quest for the Hidden Vault, I still just add 1 after the initial number is doubled, because I want to see lots of Spindle Drones coming after me, especially if I'm fortunate enough to pull 2 Spindle Drone cards. I actually have 6 models. I want 6, I want 8, I want 10. I want waves and waves. So that does increase the difficulty a little bit, but Spindle Drones they're almost never a threat, so it's mostly to increase the theme. In order to demonstrate my point for the Spindle Drones and tying into the theme and tying into the model cap limit, this is what I want to see thematically with Spindle Drones. Swarming poor Mr. Greg here from every direction. And when you are fortunate enough to pull repeating encounter hostile groups to result in something that looks like this or this, it has the potential to create an extremely thematic experience when entire waves of the same kind of enemy flood upon you. And in my experience, it does justification to the stories, which we will get to. The next modification is called Changing Conditions, and is somewhat exclusive to owning the Abominable Intellect card pack, although I feel like a person could easily get creative and come up with their own way to do this. Whenever I roll on the event table and roll Changing Conditions, instead of doing the rules as written, which is draw the top encounter card, if it has a twist, apply it, I pull from the Abominable Intellect card pack, which every card has a twist built in. Catastrophically bad luck. Glad I didn't draw that one during an actual game. So this way, it always yields a tangible result. It plays into the theme, increasing the unpredictability, randomness, chaos, how many more words can I use for the same word? And increases the difficulty of the game, of the Blackstone Fortress. Bearing in mind, you can also still pull a condition from a regular encounter card as well. So sometimes I have four unique twists going at once, which is exactly that, unique. It makes every play session that much more unpredictable and unique. The next modification is called Failed Expedition Yields no treasure and is optional. This one I like to play by ear. Essentially, when applying the previous modification of keeping all of the previous discovery cards at precipice, if there's a total party kill, the DM can decide whether to allow the heroes to maintain the discovery cards they found on the expedition when they return to precipice to give them a boost, or yield no results and shuffle all of their findings back into the deck to play into the theme that if they all lost consciousness on the Blackstone Fortress, they would definitely have been looted in some respect. I'm not going to take away all of their other items, but just the discovery cards that they found during the expedition. When applying to the Hidden Vault campaign, I still, even if I do a reset as such, I'll still draw a countdown timer. But that, even in itself, that is also optional, depending on how new the group is, how do they want more challenge or do they want a boost? The next modification is called AI targeting, although I may change the title to be a little bit more specific. Essentially, it goes like this. We're rolling a behavior roll for this guy. We're at the point where he's ready to shoot, and it says to shoot the closest explorer. In this example, Pious Foreign is closer than Diet Grek, but Pious Foreign is in cover. So what I will do is I will consider the enemies that are out of cover first and prioritize them. Of course, if this guy is next to Pious Foreign, he has to shoot her because she's adjacent. Or if they were equidistant, I would still choose Diet Grek as the target because that's who the enemy would shoot. That increases difficulty and the theme. Next modification is Chaos Space Marine save rolls. This is a rule I added in to increase the theme and the difficulty. The Chaos Space Marines are beefy, and a lot of other hostiles have save rolls for one thematic reason or another. And I think that these guys should be a little bit tougher than they are. So I basically have given them a D20 17 up save roll. That's a 1 in 5 chance of rolling a save for Chaos Space Marines. My next modification is called Resource Card Restriction. Only one resource card can be utilized per hero or hostile per action. This excludes any passive or persistent resources. An example, let's say that Daedalosus has just been fired upon, he rolls for his defense, and he fails his defense roll. Here he has 2 options of cards he could use, and I believe as the rules are written, you could probably use both of them. Let's say he takes a Grievous Wound. This card is discard this card when a Grievous Wound is applied to this explorer. That Grievous Wound is converted to a wound. Then he could exhaust this card when an explorer suffers a wound or Grievous Wound after the explorer fails the defense roll. The explorer can make an additional D6 defense roll for that wound or Grievous Wound. So, my rule allows each player only to use one card or ability per action, and that means their action or a hostile action. So you'd have to choose one or the other. Side note, luckily most of these cards you can only use once per turn anyway, so you go through them pretty fast regardless without being overpowered. The next modification is called Explosive Ammunition type cards. Follow the rules for cover when spreading over lines of cover. To explain this, explosive round. Discard this card before making an attack roll for the explorer. Make the attack roll normally, and then make attack rolls with the same weapon against all other hostiles in the same hex or an adjacent hex to the target. So in order to increase difficulty and theme in particular. Let's say that Greg is going to shoot an explosive round at this Chaos Space Marine. So he's going to use this card. He's going to roll against this guy. And then as the round explodes, it crosses over a line of cover. So essentially, this guy is in cover from that explosion. And I would roll appropriately as if Greg was shooting from here to here with over a line of cover. My next modification is called Retinue Characters Handicap. It is new and I've been playtesting it, but I like it so far. I was able to complete the entire campaign of the escalation box. It was much more challenging and I think it worked pretty well. So in order to trade off for having a fifth character join us, I attempted to make the game more challenging and more thematic when taking a retinue character instead of just easier. In one way, retinue characters tend to have some kind of quirk about them that makes them a little bit less manageable than a normal hero. Sometimes they do things on their own or have limitations, what have you. So there's that to kind of play into the uneasy alliance and the disparate nature of all the heroes. And then in order to compensate for having 3 more actions, I've made a mod that when taking a retinue character, each standard explorer may only allocate up to 3 activation dice. They still roll as many slots as they have available. So if we have these 2 heroes as examples out of 4, they have all of their spots open, so they would roll 4 activation dice and then pick their 3 that they want to keep and discard 1. If they have a wound, they will only roll 3 activation dice and keep all 3. If they have 2 wounds, they would roll 2 activation dice and keep 2. So it gives the explorers that bonus of rolling 4 still, but the handicap of only being able to keep up to 3. The next modification is called Retinue Character Aim Action, and I simply add the ability for retinue characters to use one of their activations to take an aim action. It feels like they should be able to do that, and seems like an easy fix, and it just simply improves functionality of the game. The next modification is called Death Equals Crippled. It's new and I'm playtesting it, and basically instead of when a character rolls a recovery roll and dies, we still return to Precipice as if the character had died, but the character gets a persistent wound, which I've just marked with the Sharpie there, representing that they have been permanently crippled in some capacity. You could use your imagination. Maybe they lost a leg and they have an augmentic leg for the rest of the game, really. And there is one, I believe there's one ship that allows you to bring someone back from the dead. I would say you could use it to remove the persistent wound. Still playtesting it. I liked it. It increases the difficulty. Well, it depends. It increases the difficulty where they have permanently one less allocation, but it decreases the difficulty where you can at least play them, and it definitely increases the theme. My final modification as of this version of my house rules is called Advanced Hostile Movement. It's new and I'm playtesting it. I think it might be the single most game-changing modification I've made. It is a little bit tricky to describe it succinctly, but I have done my best and will continue to work on it. The gist of it is to improve difficulty and theme by making it so that the hostiles don't do silly things. For example, here we have a grenade traitor guard. The grenade's power is strong at a 4-up, or strongest at a 4-up distance, strongest at a 2 to 3 distance, and gets weaker in close combat. What I'm doing here with this modification is the hostile will not move closer to their target if it will reduce their weapon power, except if their weapon power does or does not penetrate ignore cover, then it might change their behavior. So let's get 2 examples here, actually. The grenade guy and the heavy stubber. Grenades ignore cover, heavy stubber does not. However, they both have a similar nature, where the heavy stubber is weakest at close range and strongest in mid-range. So heavy stubber is at 4 up, it's a D12. At 2 to 3, it's a 2D12, and at range 1, it's a 1D12 again. Right now, he's at 1, 2, 3, 4. Do a couple of different examples. Rolling for the Traitor Guard. If I were to roll an advance, he gets to move, then attack. If he moves, will he end up in a position where his weapon power goes down? 1, 2. It's still mid-range for him. It's still a D8. So he will move to here and throw his grenade. Next turn, let's say he rolls another advance. If he advanced, his weapon power would go down, so he's not going to advance, and he's going to skip ahead to just attacking. Resetting this position. If I were to roll a charge for the Traitor Guard, a charge is specifically designed to get into close combat so that you might be able to take onslaught actions in the future. If the character is going to reduce his attack power by moving into close combat range, he won't if he has a weapon that ignores cover. He rolls a charge. So we're going to go, can he move once without reducing his power? Yes. So he's going to move here. Now he's going to either move again or attack. Can he move again without reducing his attack power? No. So now he's going to attack instead of moving a second time. If he starts here and rolls a charge action, it's going to take the first move. Can he move closer without reducing his attack? No. So he's going to attack once. Second move, he's going to attack again. So a charge becomes essentially an onslaught action for him. Now, switching examples. In fact, let's do this. Because now cover applies to Greg. It applies to the heavy stubber. The grenade penetrates cover, so it doesn't matter how close the grenade guy was to Greg. But the heavy stubber does not. So, let's say we roll an advance action for the heavy stubber. Can he move once without decreasing his attack power? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, in fact, if he moves closer, his attack power just went from 1d12 to 2d12. 2d12 through cover. He needs a crit. If he was here, and I roll another advance, can he move forward without decreasing his attack power? No, it's going to drop to 1d12. However, Greg is in cover. So the trade-off is he'd either have to roll a crit to get one regular wound, or if he moves up, the next turn he could potentially roll twice for an onslaught and ignore cover. So he will move all the way up. So he's going to advance. Rolls an advance. He moves here. He shoots. Advance again. He's going to move up and then shoot at close range and hope for an onslaught the next turn. If he rolls a charge, it's going to go, can he move closer without dropping an attack value once? Yes. Can he move closer without dropping an attack value second? No, but the target's behind cover, so he will move up again. And if Greg was not in cover, an advance action at this position, he's going to move up and attack because it's going to increase. It's not going to drop his attack power. In fact, it's going to increase it. From here, if he rolled an advance, he's going to move up and attack too because now he can possibly roll for an onslaught the next turn. This brings us to the next section of my house rules, which is called Fixes and Clarifications. The first being Cygor Handgun, this resource card. I have modified the attack power from 1d12 to 2d12. That is because I feel like this is a misprint, and it doesn't make any sense for it to be 1d12 power for that cost at that range with the original box of 8 heroes. No, there was no reason that anyone would ever use this card as I remember. Next is the Antidote Orb. This card is extremely overpowered unless you limit it to small and large size hostiles. Otherwise, you could take out Obsidious Malix or the Amble in one roll for a 1-up action. The next fix is the Demiurge Blasting Charge. Discard this card in the event phase. Place the Blast Hex location tile on a hex adjacent to this explorer. Any hostiles or explorers in that hex suffer 1 wound. Why would this card cost 6 trading points? Why would anyone ever buy this? I'll show you why. This is how I use this card. Hey guys, we really need to get out of here because we're dying. Too bad there's a hideous monster in the way. Hold on, I'll use the Demiurge Blasting Charge and blow a hole in this wall for everyone to pass through. No one was in that space, so no one suffered 1 wound, and now every one of my explorers can all pass through a wall, essentially, and get to the exit. Yay! Please don't go. I love you. The next fix I have on my list, I'll just say out loud. For the Hidden Vault, reinforcements follow the normal reinforcement rules. New deployments activate normally as soon as they are deployed. That is for literally the last level, the Hidden Vault. Enemy save rolls throughout the entire game only take place in combat situations. No rolls for environment damage, such as if there's some fire on the board and an enemy that has a save. One of these Negavolt cultists moves over fire and takes damage, they don't roll for their save roll. Or traps, resource cards, fire tokens, etc. And the same thing applies to heroes sometimes, but I can't think of... I usually take that on a case-by-case scenario. If it feels like they're not supposed to roll for save, like let's say there's some environmental thing like a changing condition that says roll a d6 for noxious fumes for all explorers to potentially take wounds, they would not roll save rolls because they can't use their shield against poisonous gas. The Deadly Lure. Amble treats the egg holder as the closest enemy unless he does not have line of sight. That is helpful. The next clarification and fix is Dayak Grek may disarm one of his traps for a 1-up from an adjacent space. The trap is then exhausted. How many times has this happened to you? Before the turn begins, Grek can move and put down 1 trap for free. So, oh, there's a bunch of enemies over there. I know, guys, I'll take care of this. I'll lay down one of my very useful traps. And now when they walk over it, they'll die today. And then, for some reason, Grek ends up being at the end of the line. And Niam Shai here, her turn comes up. She doesn't want to just sit there and do nothing. So she's going to go ahead and... I'm going to roll a couple of 6 and take like 9 shots at these guys. Oh no, now they're all dead. Who's going to mindlessly walk over this trap and blow it up for us? Us? Well, now Grek can just go, don't worry, I'll fix my mistake. I'll spend a 1, exhaust the trap, and remove it from the board. And then everyone can move freely. It helps. The next rule is also about Dayak Grek. Probably because he's my favorite character, especially in the stories. Grek has a rule on his card. Fieldcraft. Dayak Grek is defense value D12 if he is in cover from the attacking hostile. The way I play this is if this guy takes an aim action and shoots through cover, Dayak Grek still gets the benefit of his chameleon-like skin and rolls a D12, but then this guy also gets the benefit of ignoring cover. So we kind of meet in the middle. For me, that keeps the theme nice and strong. Amelin Shadow Guide's Phase Crystal ability. Take a move action with Amelin Shadow Guide. She can move through walls and enter obstructed hexes as part of the move, as long as she does not end the move in an obstructed hex. In addition, she does not have to halt the move when she enters a hex adjacent to a hostile that is visible to her. Just for clarification's sakes, This is a wall in Blackstone Fortress. This is an obstructed hex. She can go right through this, but you can also go right through this. And I limit it to 1 wall space maximum, so she can't go, I'm just digging through space and time. Like, the phase crystal allows her to move through a wall, and so I feel like it should be limited to that much space. And it's fun. The Psyker Disrupt solo clarification. This is, for me playing solo at least. I forget exactly how it's written for normal play, but I've only ever played solo. The way I handle the Psyker Disrupt behavior roll is I look for any 6s, look for any 5s, look for any 4s. Starting with the highest and starting with the Destiny dice. Okay? In my opinion, a Destiny dice 6 is the strongest dice on the table because anyone can use it. It's essentially everyone's 6. So is there a 6 in the Destiny pool? Yes or no? Disrupt that one. Is there a 6? No. If there's a 6 on one of the player's cards, take that one away. The next fix and clarification is bonus attacks. Take the same weapon action again. Only grant 1 additional attack. If the initial attack was an aimed attack, the bonus will also be aimed. Any other abilities that allow the take the same weapon action again also only grant 1 additional action. An example, flurry of attacks, sustained fire, etc. Let's say we're talking about Janus Drake, and he has full auto setting. Exhaust this card. After this explorer takes a weapon action, take the same weapon action again. No activation dice is spent. Drake already has flurry of attacks. For a 6-up, he can attack 3 times. So if I spend a 6 and attack 3 times, and then use full auto setting, instead of attacking 3 more times, I only allow a maximum of 1 additional attack. And like I wrote, if it was an aimed attack initially, it will still be aimed. This was ridiculously overpowered the first time I played the game. Now we're going to talk about stunned models. Stunned models cannot use defense or save rolls, covering fire, or gambits. And for some examples of the enemies, how I like to play it, let's say you've got a cluster of Negavolt cultists. Normally, they have a save roll of 20 up, and then it's -2 for every adjacent additional Negavolt cultist. So if this guy gets attacked, he gets a save roll of 20, 18, 16 up, and they get to save that attack roll. If they become stunned, 1, this target can't roll for a save. In addition to that, I don't count them as being able to bulk up these other guys' saves. So then if this one was attacked, they would only get the bonus of this guy. So it would be an 18 up save. In the example of a Rogue Psyker usually gets a 20 up save. If they are stunned and they get attacked, there's no save. Any hero has a save roll. If they are stunned and get attacked, they don't roll save roll. Then I have one called Behavior Roll Not Applicable. If Behavior Roll is not applicable, reduce the dice roll to the next applicable action, if any. So if you roll a 6 and it's Sneak, and then maybe a 1 is Advance somehow, then you would fall back to Advance. But it rarely happens. Stronghold Pullout, this is just for the... This is essentially for the quest for the Hidden Vault. Between exploration cards, once you decide to go and attempt an attack on a stronghold, you spend your 4 clues, I believe it is, and then you have to do a series of exploration cards until you reach that vault. If things go really bad and you want to exit between exploration cards, you can, but you still lose those clue cards, and you still advance the tracker as per usual. It just gives you the ability to pull out if you want to. And that brings us to the end of my custom house rules for Blackstone Fortress as they are currently written. And I just have one more personal recommendation to give. Being that the main driving desire for all of these rules for me is to increase the thematical, immersive experience first, then the difficulty or challenge. And the best way, in my opinion, to increase your thematic, immersive experience is by reading the books, the stories. I loved the stories so much that I upgraded all of my copies to the ridiculously priced hardcover versions. And from a thematic, immersive stance, you cannot deny that this is a lot of content that does not come in the box. And this is not all of it. There are also radio plays and some additional short stories available online that are not in these volumes. My name is Goodjesse. I love Blackstone Fortress so much. It is my favorite Warhammer Quest series, and with all of this work that I put into it, it's no wonder. It's become an extremely tailored experience that I would love to share with others. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, you are as big a nerd as I am. And hopefully there's some common ground there, and I hope that you enjoy. Cheers.